Okay, I call to order the Rolesville Board of Commissioners work session, November 15th, 2022. And this is a work session, but we also have a legislative hearing at this session tonight. Not many items on the agenda. We do need to add one. Number 3 will be a closed session at the request of the attorney. So other than that, I think the agenda is pretty much set. First item on the welcome everybody that's in attendance tonight. Appreciate your coming, participating. Everybody watching online, thank you. We do have a couple items we're covering tonight, so appreciate everybody attending. First item is a budget amendment for Town Hall sewer repair. Looks like, Kelly, you're going to present that one?
Mr. Mayor and Board, in the audience also is J.G. Ferguson, Eric Marsh, who actually were the primary staff working on this. But I'm hoping this is a simple request. We've had a problem with our plumbing in Town Hall for a period of time, and we think we have a resolution. It is taking out some flooring and getting to some pipe in Town Hall, actually right behind this wall. We've picked a date to hopefully be quieter time, a period of time to do it in mid-December. We went out and received quotes, and we have a project that we're ready to proceed on. The details were in your memo. We can go through that if you like, but we're asking for a budget amendment to do that project, then also replace the flooring in there, and make sure we have some contingency for that project. I think the budget amendment's for $22,000, is that right? $18,000, excuse me. So we're here to answer any questions or if you need some details of that project, but it took a while to figure it out. But after much time and, we're having to address it twice a week now, it's something we feel like is needed to be done right now.
Very good. I guess, Eric, anything you want to add? You or JG? No. So it's an $18,000 request for I guess, emergent project for repair of plumbing here in Town Hall. I think it's a couple days. We just about had to close Town Hall in this process, have we not? Because of lack of plumbing.
Correct.
So it's something that does need to be fixed, I think. Mm-hmm. Is it any paper, anything that the commissioners can see the numbers?
It's in the packet, yeah. The memo.
Yeah,
okay. Sorry, the packet has all the details.
So I will entertain discussion or motion on the item in the package.
Move to approve the ordinance to amend the 2022-23 fiscal year budget ordinance.
I'll second it.
Okay. Got a motion to approve and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I have a quick question. Just wanted to know how many vendors we went to for these repairs. Was there more than one? I'm assuming there was. I just didn't see that mentioned unless I missed it. I could have missed it.
No, ma'am, I don't believe I did put that in the memo. I'd have to go back and reread it. But we did put it out on the town's website through the hub website and the ISP, I believe, that Ms. Kroom does through our procurement process. So we did send it out to make sure we hit all of our town policies and town goals that we have. We did not receive any bids through that process, so we went out cold calling local plumbers who would actually do the surface and come out. So we ended up calling maybe 5 or 6 plumbers and got quotes from 2 of those.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? I think it's unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate it, board.
Thank you.
And what dates are you going to do that?
The day after our next meeting, December 6th, I believe is the date. 7th?
7.
December 7th.
Yeah.
It won't. I thought it was over the holidays. So it's not going to be over the holidays. Then.
It's going to be December 7th.
Don't have to close town hall or anything.
We have to close a partial hallway and have a couple employees work remote, but the balance will be here still. And we'll have some mobile restrooms brought in so the rest of the facility, so staff can use that.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, item 2, legislative hearing. This is for map amendment 22-03, annexation of 22-06 Parker Ridge. Right, if you don't mind, hand me that sheet right there. You just sign up names on it.
I know there's some other people in the audience who,
Anybody else want to sign it for? All right, come up and sign it.
me to bring it to you?
Thank you, Murray, appreciate that.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. For your consideration this evening is a map amendment or rezoning request, as well as an annexation petition for a project called Parker Ridge. I'd like to start the presentation off by orienting everyone to what we're looking at and where we are. The site is highlighted in the sort of aqua tealish color, and you can see it is surrounded by South Main Street, East Young Street, and 401. And it's kind of in between Walbrook and Cobblestone. It's adjacent to Redford Place Park and our town site, and it's pretty close to our new Public Works facility site. It's also close to Rolesville Elementary.
Just for further orientation, can you point out where Food Line is?
Certainly. Food Line is right here.
Perfect, thank you.
So the subject property is 88.5 acres, and it's located at 82 and 120 School Street and 201 Redford Place Drive. And the portion that's part of the annexation petition is 61.37 acres. The applicant is proposing to change the zoning from residential and planned unit development and residential low to residential medium conditional zoning district, as well as residential high conditional zoning district. One of the conditions is a concept plan that we will take a look at. So the concept plan, a little bit easier to go on to the next two slides. It's in two sections. I mentioned they're asking for two different zoning districts. So on the western side of the project, the requested zoning is residential high conditional zoning district, and the concept plan shows 114 townhomes, and the townhome lots are shown in pink and purple. The pink are an alley-loaded product, and the purple are a front-loaded product. And the townhome section is about 3.9 units per acre. The other side of the project, the requested zoning is residential medium conditional zoning district, and the request here is for a cluster subdivision. The concept plan shows 162 single-family lots. Those are shown in yellow. And the density is about 2.8 units per acre for this part. And if you average the two sides together, the average density is 3.18 or close to 3.2 units per acre. In addition to the concept plan being a voluntary proposed condition, there are some other conditions, and the applicant will go into more detail on those, but to summarize them, there are some prohibited uses for the residential high section, and that is a live-work unit, residential care, and a telecommunications tower. The applicant has the condition here to have a maximum of 120 townhomes. Mentioned before, the concept plan shows 114, but they're adding a cap of 120. Prohibited use for the residential medium section or the single-family detached section is telecommunications tower. And again, they have a cap for the single-family section of 170 dwelling units. The applicant is offering to donate a home to a veterans organization. They're offering to include at least one pollinator garden in the project. And they're asking that the perimeter buffers include fences instead of walls. And the reason for this request is to save some trees. When you build a wall, you have to take down more trees than you do when you build a fence. And there are some existing trees adjacent to the existing neighborhoods, and it would be best to keep trees in those locations. There's a list of architectural commitments for both the single-family detached dwellings and the townhomes. There's also an offer to dedicate land for a public park. Some other items I'll call topics of discussion that are not voluntary offered conditions, but they have been discussed, include connectivity to Young Street, the existing pavement condition of Redford Place Drive, if that could be improved, and then improvement of landscaping and/or the addition of public art in the roundabout that's in Redford Place Drive. So the future land use designation for the subject site is high-density residential. High-density residential can include a wide variety of housing types, single-family detached, townhomes, duplex, triplex, multifamily, and the typical density for high-density residential is 6 to 12 units per acre. I mentioned before, the current zoning is residential and planned unit development. That's the lighter yellow color. And residential low is more of the mustard color. And the applicant would like to change the R and PUD section, so take that out of the PUD and make that residential high. And then on the other side, change the residential low to residential medium conditional zoning district. Our community transportation plan shows a thoroughfare network and a collector network, and the applicant's concept plan does show the collector network as shown here. The site is approximately here where the word site is. So this, where my pointer is, this is School Street. So that is identified as a collector, and the dash line shows the connections that need to be made when development or redevelopment comes through. So that connects down here, and then a collector connection is shown needing to be made from about where the site is over to Young Street. Our new greenway plan shows greenways going through the site, and the applicant does show a good greenway network going through their concept plan. A traffic impact analysis was finalized on August 15th, 2022, and the project will bring close to 2,400 new daily trips. And the major recommendation that came out of the traffic impact analysis is to construct the new streets at the roundabout, and those are the streets that go into the townhome portion of the project. And this evening, I know you're used to seeing Matt Peach. We don't have Matt Peach tonight, but we do have Krista Green and Pierre Tong from Stantec. So they are available for your questions when we get through the presentation. So if we talk about consistency with the comprehensive plan, the proposed housing types, single-family detached and townhome, are consistent with a high-density category because the high-density category includes all different types of housing. However, the density is less than what we expect for high density. High density is 6 to 12 units per acre, and the average density of this project is about 3.2. As mentioned before, the roadway network connections are illustrated well in the concept plan, as are the greenways. So I mentioned that housing types are consistent with our future land use designation. The density is different. So at the planning board meeting we had back in, was it September? Or it was October. Board members had questions about the parkland dedication. They wanted to know if that parkland dedication included any programming, and the answer to that is no, not yet. And the board members also asked if there had been any collaboration with Wake County Public School System staff as far as the functionality of School Street goes. The planning board did unanimously recommend approval of the Parker Ridge rezoning case, and they had an adamant attachment to that recommendation, and that was an expectation to address concerns about traffic on School Street. Staff agrees with the planning board's recommendation. So it's overall, on balance, it is consistent with our comprehensive plan, especially with the community transportation plan and the greenway plan. But the School Street connection and how traffic will flow through there absolutely needs to be addressed. So this time I'd like to invite the applicant up. They have a presentation. Oops, I did not mean to hit that one.
Meredith, before you leave,
Yes.
or before you invite them up, I had a question. You said average back in the density. Are you averaging everything together?
Yes, when I wanted to know what is the density of the entire project?
Overall.
Yeah, the townhome, obviously the townhome piece is higher, the single-family detached is a little lower. Bring that together, the whole project has a density of about 3.2 units per acre.
Got you, but the townhome portion is higher. I thought I heard that.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Hey, Meredith, before we bring up the applicant, would it be appropriate if we ask some questions of our transportation people beforehand?
Absolutely. I can bring this slide back up if you would like, and if you'd like to have Krista or Pierre or both come up.
Yeah, because I think it may be better in the future we make that part of the
Sure.
staff.
That sounds
'Cause,
great.
you know, it should be part of the staff, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Krista.
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. Krista Green with Stantec, and am a registered professional engineer and have been around doing this for about, I'll just say 30 years, so I sort of dropped the plus after a while, too. So we did do this study following the guidelines of the LDO and the congestion management guidelines. We did reach out to NCDOT that the traffic that this site generates is below their threshold, so they didn't feel they needed to review it, too. So we have scoped it with the town, and all the driveways functioned well. And at Redford Place, Rogers Road, and South Main Street, the no-build conditions were a level of service D in the AM and level of service E in the PM, and they maintained those same levels of service. So per the LDO the applicant didn't need to mitigate that. They did mention that Old Rogers Road and School Street at South Main Street, that with the additional traffic on the side streets, that there was a big increase in delay. Overall, at a unsignalized intersection, if you look at the overall delay, it's relatively low because most of the traffic is the through volumes too. And we looked at some different options, and everybody's sort of the go-to when you've got a unsignalized intersection is add a signal. And signals work great, except that this one's just 800 feet from another signal. So if you think about that.
This is School Street?
Yes. So if you ended up putting a signal at School Street with the adjacent, you start with, when the signals are red, you've just got a mess with the queues backing into each other too. So you would not probably get support for a traffic signal there. So looked at potentially adding turn lanes. So that way you at least pull some of the left turns and right turns off. And really, once again, the through traffic's so high that it got a little bit better, but it obviously doesn't mitigate it. And one other option we looked at was converting the southbound approach of Old Rogers Road to a right-in, right-out would help mitigate the traffic, not the site traffic. But once again, if you do this, you would really need a median in the road to make it function properly, or the design too. So in the end, we recommended leaving it the same, just because the side street traffic is really not that much, even though they are experiencing delays, and there are some alternate paths they can take.
Question on that. I know several people have reached out to me on this project, and most of them are okay, other than School Street. In fact, I've had a call this morning from somebody on School Street. And as I go through, different towns when it has schools, I've seen places where they change the traffic flow during school hours or during, peak times. Would this project work if we prohibit through traffic on School Street
On School Street?
doing school?
Plus, even just the volume on Main Street, it's just the cars even taking a right are having trouble getting out, so.
That's what I'm saying. We just wouldn't wouldn't allow any traffic be directed during School Street, say during morning and hour, if school's in. Only during school time.
With school traffic, so I guess you'd have to get the traffic, some enforcement to help with that too, that it would help. Once again, it's not a whole lot of vehicles you're talking about. I mean, look, even in the future with all the approved development.
Are you saying school in Maine?
Yeah, that street.
AM, PM. So like in the afternoon, there's 23 cars in a whole hour trying to take that right turn too, so.
From this new community?
No, from the actual development it's, I think, 8 is
Eight.
all that the site is generating too. Yes, 12 in the morning and 8 in the afternoon are all that are being added to School
Yeah,
Street.
and to keep from adding any at all, could we sign it with signs that says those 8 and 12 can't come through there? No through traffic on certain hours? I think I've seen that in a lot of places around schools and stuff.
It's a public road, and
It's a town road, I think.
if it's a town road, I don't know the exact answer. I would think I would have to defer to someone from the town if y'all have that authority too. But they have alternate paths they can take too, that those 12 and 8 cars could easily head up Rogers Road too,
Right.
so. And if they have to wait that long, they probably will go up Rogers Road anyway too. So I think traffic, if it's routine traffic, sort of figures its way out
Yes.
because.
Surprising, just that low, 8 and 12.
Yeah, that was my question. The 8 and 12
That's
sounds
the additional
ridiculous.
from this site.
That's what, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
That's the additional from the site we're
from the
looking at, too.
townhome side? Is that what we're talking about?
From the whole Parker Ridge development, too. So if you count all the traffic there, that's what you see, what you're seeing in the analysis. There's,
So you're adding about 300 units, I'm estimating, so forgive my math, I'm not trying to be exact. About 300 units, and you said that will add an additional 8 vehicles?
in the AM peak hour.
In the AM,
So-
and 12 in
then-
the after. I just want to make sure I understood
Yes,
that.
yes.
Because it sounds
Because we're looking, most of the
ridiculous.
traffic's going to go up and down Rogers Road, where they can get out with a traffic signal. So we recognize that some people are going to try to cut over, especially if they're, going up and taking a right that might use School Street.
How do you make that call? Help me understand that. I'm not a traffic
Engineering
engineer.
judgment and actually working with the town too, and that anything that we've done when we're doing the scoping, that we lay our assumptions out there and make sure that the town is on board also.
So 8 and 12 compares with other 300-unit
Oh,
areas?
well, that's just the traffic just going up through School Street, so that's about 10% of the traffic. Most of the traffic is going to go up to where there's a signal to get out at Rogers Road.
Not that traffic is
What if I'm
backed
taking
up.
my child to school?
If the traffic is,
If you put the map of where the houses are gonna be planned to be at, so they can see the roads where those houses would be directed at traffic flow.
That's what I'm looking at.
Some homes will go a different route out.
Does this show enough, or
Some
do you
will
want
go
the
a
aerial
different route out.
photograph?
So that's where I think they're getting the 12 versus some of them.
Can you tell me the peak hour that was used for this study? Was it during elementary school time, pick up and drop off?
Yes, so we actually counted traffic between 7 and 9:45 in the morning to make sure we caught the peak hour time. So the assumption is, they've got 50% going to and from Main Street. So you've got 75% actually heading up to Main Street. And then 25% on Rogers Road. Let's see.
I'm sorry, where are they coming out of again to be heading to Main Street? Because are you talking about coming out of School Street?
Out of School Street, they've assumed that 20% will be coming from the east of Main Street and taking a left off of Main Street. And then 15% will be taking a right on School Street. And then the ones coming out and those are the ones that are experienced all the later, the people leaving, that's 10% of the traffic.
I'm a little confused, but I do want to say something to the mayor. When
Okay.
you had asked about during school hours, you have schools that are in session all year long. So how does that factor into that? Your question?
I didn't hear you.
I said he had mentioned not allowing traffic during school hours, but there are year-round schools in the area. So school hours are going to take place all year long. So how do you account for that? I'm not really asking you for a number. I'm taking it back to add on to what he had mentioned
And we're
earlier.
just talking about through traffic, not stopping school traffic from going through.
Through traffic.
No, I'm not saying it's not stopping school traffic. I'm just saying, how does
Okay,
that all
yeah, no,
play
no.
into each other?
So that And I guess you're saying you do it with signing and,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of schools where they have no left turns during school hours and, they redirect traffic during school time and stuff like that. I think that's what we're saying, just redirect the traffic during, on Saturdays, you go anywhere you want to
yeah.
go.
And I could see, if the town with an ordinance doing that, as I said, it's relatively few cars. There is a good alternative location for them to go. So I do not think it would be a big impact to this development too.
And you really didn't do any study on the future access through, to East Young Street at all?
So we had the,
Because I think a lot of traffic will go through there once that connection is made.
So, yeah, we had the lane configurations from the Main Street project, and, but then just anything that would be constructed by 2028 too, so.
Might add to that
Yeah,
one.
sure.
So this TIA was completed in August, and the discussions about the Young Street connection happened after completion of the TIA.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So yes, if it connects through to Young Street, it would be a much different traffic distribution. So we have not considered that. So you would definitely be taking traffic off of Main Street, and DOT would likely be involved if it were, if you had an access on Young Street, because they would need a driveway permit. This current development does not need a driveway permit from NCDOT. Once again, why they, passed on reviewing the traffic study.
But there's not a time specific for when that street is going to be completed,
That's
correct?
That's right, that's what we have not studied. If the connection were to go through, it would be a much different traffic pattern. So this is looking at a worst-case scenario for Main Street.
Which could be for several years. And then those houses could be built up, or the community could be built out, and we'll be dealing with the worst-case scenario for the next couple of years. Right?
Well, for the traffic going out on Main Street, as I said that before, that you've got your few traffic on School Street, but it does not degrade the traffic at Main Street and Rogers Road.
And that's not even considering, or is it considering future development of
Yes.
other? Oh
We
my
have
God.
considered 3 approved developments. All of those are in there. Cobblestone, Redford Place, and Scarborough were all taken into account through this study.
Did you say approved?
Yeah, that's what I caught that.
They weren't
Well,
approved.
all of those, the developments were included in this study.
Cobblestone is approved, I think.
Is-
I'm just saying not all of them that she mentioned were.
Any other questions?
With traffic.
Reserve.
No, I got others.
Oh, I just have one question. In here, just for my own information, I saw a number of 580 seconds.
Yeah, and so.
That was correct. That's on one of those side
That's
streets.
for the minor streets, so the overall delay is very low. But how it works with the capacity analysis, that once it gets sort of exponential too, that nobody's going to wait 500, but that's what the software spits out. And that is the fact that, when something gets really bad, people are going to find other routes to go to. But yeah, we do report what comes out of Synchro, and it does at some point in time get somewhat exponential when you just add a couple more cars.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm concerned with traffic. Yes, sir.
All right. Meredith, you want to come back up?
Do you have any questions for me before the applicant presentation?
Building isn't there.
No, I'll pull theirs up.
Okay, well, come up, before you start, come on up. Before you start, I would just remind everybody in the audience, please be recognized and come up and speak in the microphone, because people cannot hear you on the video if you're speaking from the chair. So everybody must come up and speak from the microphone, please, so you can be recorded and heard by the public. All yours, thank you.
All right, good evening, Mayor Curran, Commissioners. I'm Collier Marsh with Parker Poe. I'm here on behalf of the applicant in this case, and that is Lennar Homes. We've got a number of members of our development team here as well to answer any questions that you may have. And so Meredith already did a great job summarizing this project and hitting a lot of the high notes, but I did just want to cover a few more things in our presentation. Happy to also answer some of the questions that came up and give our input on that as well. We are calling this the Parker Ridge Project, and so it is a rezoning as well as a annexation of the corresponding parcels. And so again, orienting the commissioners with the site and the surrounding area. 4 total parcels make up this assemblage, in total about 88 acres, and it's in a really important location for the town. And so we recognize that, and we've taken the town's plans for this area seriously as we've evaluated this project. There are a number of factors to balance that are immediately apparent based on where we are here. We have Main Street just north of the site, adjacent to the new town property, the town hall property to the east of the site, adjacent to an elementary school, a park. And then we transition to lower density single family neighborhoods to the south and to the west. So there's a lot of competing factors to take into account here, but the site's proximity to Main Street is really important as well. And so we've tried to balance everything in the proposal that you're seeing tonight. We always, as an applicant, look to the existing zoning and we look at future land use map for guidance as to how we should approach the site. The existing zoning here, as Meredith mentioned, RPUD on the left-hand side, or the west side shown in yellow. That was part of the Villages of Rolesville RPUD district, and so as part of this rezoning, we would be replacing that old district in this section with new districts. Then the low-density residential for the eastern side. On the right-hand side is the future land use map, and it unifies the entire site with the high-density residential designation. And so that is a guiding factor for this site as to what should we bring here, something that's in line with that high-density residential designation, but again, balancing a number of factors, which we need to do. So to balance all these factors, we're proposing 2 districts, again, shown in different colors. On the left-hand side, in yellow, the residential high-density conditional zoning district. But the best way to describe that is that's the townhome section of this community. And so that would be on the western side. And then on the eastern side, the residential medium conditional zoning district, that would be the single-family detached section. Within this request, there are 11 proposed conditions, and there's a wide range of them. Some of them are summarized on the slide. They're prohibited uses. I'll clarify, in each district, it lists here family care facility, but in discussions with the town attorney, that wouldn't be an enforceable condition, so that is not a prohibited use in this condition. This presentation should have been updated, but the actual zoning conditions do not include that family care facility as a prohibited use. Caps on the number of units, 120 townhomes, but as you'll see on the plan, what we're looking at is about 114 is what's shown on the plan. Similarly, 170 single-family detached, and we're showing less on the plan based on what actually fits. One of the conditions of the rezoning is compliance with the concept plan. The condition does allow adjustments to be made at the site plan stage when you get into the finer details, but the development overall must comply with it. The concept plan, as we see, there are a number of elements to highlight here, but you can see in the color of the units how the neighborhood varies, how we achieve that high-density residential designation with a mixture of residential uses that are called for in the comprehensive plan. So in the townhome section, the purple and pink distinguish 2 product types, purple being front-loaded or garage and driveway in front townhomes, pink being rear-loaded garage in the back with an alley. So when you're on that primary street, you don't have vehicles in the front, and you have a much more attractive and interesting streetscape. And I think that's especially important along Redford Place, where we've oriented that section of rear-loaded townhomes to create a unique streetscape in that location. As you transition to the eastern side, those single-family detached homes and those lots are shown in yellow. But you also see a lot of green on this site, and I think that's a defining characteristic of this proposal, is the open space that we're providing. And so the ability to align with the town's future land use map, but also preserve important environmental features and the natural environment close to Main Street, close to the future town hall, close to a park and an elementary school. and not the least of which is a large, call it a pond, call it a lake. I don't know the definition, the difference between the two, but it's about 6 acres. And so that's a major feature of this site and something that we're excited to show you and excited to bring to the town and activate through greenways. Greenways are shown in pink on this slide. They go throughout the site, connecting a number of locations, again, to the town site to the east. They connect to School Street. They connect to the park. They bring folks to Main Street. They connect to adjacent neighborhoods. So a lot of pedestrian connectivity is achieved through this site. In total, about 1.5 miles, and greenways are provided, over 2 miles of sidewalk, so very walkable in a location where walkability should be encouraged to reduce vehicle traffic and to bring folks to Main Street. Also highlighting the buffer condition here, just to clarify, we are proposing some enhanced buffers in some locations, but we requested a deviation, as Meredith explained, not to provide walls, because when you provide walls, you have to clear about 10 feet, and then the footing goes about 2 feet, and that 2 feet of digging ends up killing the roots for trees beyond that 10-foot barrier. So it undermines the goal of having a effective buffer, especially adjacent to some of our residential neighbors. Another condition commits to a project that Lennar has been involved in a while and has had on a number of other projects a commitment to donate a home to a veteran. So in the past, they've worked with Wounded Warrior Homes, Operation Coming Home, and Operation Finally Home, so a number of different organizations. But what this condition commits to is that a home ultimately is donated free of cost to a veteran, typically a wounded warrior, as part of this project. So the lot, the home and everything, turnkey, ready to go for that person.
Is that a single family or a townhouse?
Single family detached home. Yep. We've added a pollinator garden condition and identified on the site where that would go. It's a pretty large space. If you look at the lots next to it, the size of a number of lots. And so the commitment is tailored to have 75% of those planted of plants in that garden, with the exception of grass, to be pollinator-friendly plants to help support and support butterflies and other natural species. A number of architectural commitments. So we've heard feedback that we want to make sure that this project is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, that it looks nice in its prominent location. And so we have a number of commitments for each of both the single family detached as well as the townhomes. Those are all listed here, but they deal with front facade commitments, porch commitments, garage commitments. So overall, ensuring high quality development, which is shown in our architectural commitments. I will say that these haven't been updated to reflect every commitment that we have. And one of those commitments that has been added since these elevations were created is to raise that ground floor on the single family detached homes, so you don't have a foundation, or the slab on grade as they call it. You're up at least 12 inches high with steps up to the front door and then masonry along that foundation. These are representative elevations of the front-loaded townhomes. Now, these will be 1 and 2 car garage units. This just shows 1 because it's the starting point for those elevations. And then as you all know, when folks buy a home, they add a bunch of options, and these start to vary, and they start to add more architectural elements. So the conditions show the bare minimum that you have to have, and then folks start adding on after that. These are the rear-loaded townhomes, and again, these are the standard elevation with upgrades to be selected, different colors, wouldn't just be white and gray, but folks can have variation when they select those homes. Parks and Recreation is a big feature of this project, and I think kind of one of the major public benefits is how this project provides natural features and active features for the community. So in the upper left-hand corner in that bright green is land that would be offered for dedication to the town for use as a future park. So it's directly across the street from the park that's there today. We didn't program it because I think that would ultimately be up to the town. What is the most appropriate use there? We didn't want to select that for you all. So it's open for whatever it needs to be. It will be dedicated and given to the town to be used as you see fit. We did do some study as to what could fit there. You could fit a couple of tennis courts and parking lots if that was of interest. Similarly, there would be enough parking for a playground or another amenity, so you could have a use and have the parking that accompanies it. Not counting that 1.5 acres for the park, there's 46.2 acres of open space throughout this site. It's an 88-acre site, so that means that over half of this site, all that green is preserved as open space in this project. So not trying to cover every section of the land with development, but to be sensitive and to work with the natural environment and limit disturbance. I mentioned the 2.8 miles of sidewalks and 1.5 miles of public greenway. We also have near the circle on Redford Place, you can see the yellow star there. That is where the clubhouse, the pool, and the main community amenity would be. So again, a kind of a prominent feature as you enter from Redford Place. Pollinator Garden is with the other yellow star at the upper section of the screen here. And then just bringing it all back together, we're looking at all of the greenway trails in pink throughout the site. We're preserving that. Call it a pond, call it a lake. It's 6 acres, it's large, but I think that is a defining feature of this project. You can see the Greenway Trail heading north right to the town property, heading to the west right to the park. And what that access is quite a beautiful lake that will be open to the public through those public greenway trails. So I think that's a really exciting feature of this project. And so that is our proposal in a nutshell. But again, we've got a number of folks.
Where was the clubhouse? I missed that.
It is, if we can see a cursor here, right, see the star here?
Okay, so
Yeah,
where's, okay.
right at Redford Place.
And
I
that's
got you.
for the whole entire community?
Yeah, so if you look for reference, this is 1.5 acres right here. So a little less than an acre, but then the white is also the accompanying parking. So it would be the clubhouse and the pool would be in that location. Parking is not covered in that green, would be in the white.
Where's the pool?
It would be in this section
In that
here.
area.
Yeah.
And question for you, for the 2.8 miles of sidewalk, does that count into coming out towards School Street?
So that is everything within the boundary of our property. That counts all of it. So it brings the sidewalk. Sidewalks go right to our property line on both sides of the street.
But that
And-
is an exit, correct?
That's
Is it an exit?
an exit. So that, as drawn, that's two-way traffic. But we hear the discussion on School Street and what the impact of this development would be to School Street. So we have been in discussions with Wake County Schools and have continued, based on the feedback we've heard from the commissioners and from members of the constituents, we jump-started those conversations again and have continued ways to, as the mayor suggested, looked at if there are ways to restrict access during certain times, and trying to find the best solution. So the school board is engaged in those discussions now, more fully engaged, and is interested in finding a solution through this project.
I have a question. How much of the 46.25 acres is passive?
Well, so the Greenway Trail would be the majority of the active space. So you have the active space, the clubhouse and amenity. The active space would be the park, as well as we're adjacent to the park, but the vast majority is passive open space. So it's wooded, it keeps the natural environment, it prevents grading.
So how much is active?
So
I mean, either passive or active, how much is either?
I can tell you what the requirement would be.
Sure.
Sure.
Not really the requirement, how much?
Oh, they may not have figured that out yet, but I'll let you go. Would you like me to share the requirement?
You know
for-
why I say that? Because if if that portion of the property cannot be used anyway, I get it, make the best of it. But sometimes I think it's important that we realize how much of that is active and how much is really passive. Because to me, all of this looks so busy because it's using up less space versus if there were more active space, and I know there's percentages.
Right.
To spread some of that out. Right now, everything looks on top of each other coming out of the villages.
I'll let you go.
we hadn't separately calculated the active space, but what I'd reiterate is the active open space is, we can show it pretty clearly on the plan. It's the amenity. It would be this park area that would be dedicated. It would be the greenway trails throughout. The rest is left in its natural, it would be either landscaped or left in a riparian state. So
So what's the good definition of garden? Is that not active or passive? We think that's active.
It's what you make of it, though, right? It's not necessarily active.
I can-
You
I can
made
help
it
with that
active.
Very quickly. Actually, in our LDO, greenways are considered passive, and active features are more like playgrounds, ball fields, swimming pools, clubhouses, and everything that goes along with that.
So, this is just me sometimes when I see those numbers, and I'm not saying I don't like the plan, all right? But when we see those numbers and we hear, this much of it is being used, is being saved as open space. I just want the transparency in that just because it's open space and this is what's left, it was you all trying to develop a plan around what land you cannot use anyway versus the active space. And I think that gives a clearer and truer picture because once this development is made, you're going to see basically a half an acre, even though some of it is active, of all this open space, which you probably couldn't build anything on anyway. But it would at least be, I think, a little bit more, it would paint a truer picture if people knew, excuse me, what active and passive space really is.
And that's a good point, because I think in a lot of situations, there is certain, you couldn't develop here no matter what area. Now, I will say that of the open space that we're providing, that is not all within that category that you could not develop here no matter what. So when we look at the site, we look at what the most efficient and effective way is to have a nice community, to balance all those factors. And so here, the places where you absolutely can't develop, the lake, the riparian areas, are much more narrow. We could get more lots into some of those areas. And so we could find ways to, say, make bigger lots, to have more lots. But if you do that, there are a lot of costs that go into it. And so if we started, because of slope on this site, for example, we could add more lots in some of these areas. And if we started pushing lots and adding a couple curves in the street, you could do it, but what you're going to do is you're going to build retaining walls, you're going to have more grading, and so the cost per lot starts to go up. And that starts to factor into the affordability of each of these homes. So if we try to push homes into some of these areas, the grading costs will stay constant, and those will be shared across. And so all of a sudden, the home prices start going up, and our market research doesn't start to pen. So I agree with what you're saying, that there is undeveloped area that you shouldn't just say, hey, we're doing this great thing that we were going to do anyway. Here, it's a balance between all of those things, and we could do more. We've elected not to, and we think this is the most efficient way to use the site.
It looks to me like the townhome site is very active, like it looks happening, but not so much for the single-family homes. Other than the pollinator garden, I just feel like there's something y'all could do to wake it up. And you referenced the park. Unless you all are developing that park, that's sitting there, you're dedicating land. That's different than developing a park. So those are some things I want you to think about. And
Yeah,
then-
but I think dedicating land is a good thing.
I do think that's a
I
good
mean,
thing.
that's
but
something we
You
can-
can't count that as active space.
That's something we can put in our five-year, 10-year park
Right,
development.
but he indicated it was part of active space.
Gotcha.
It's not, it's undeveloped land that they're going to dedicate to us. Great. Not turning it down, just making a point.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback.
I think, for future reference, maybe one of the things to put in your, notes is maybe show what can be active and what can't be passive. Because, if you're looking for, I guess if you make an area where you can throw a frisbee, that's active, right? And, I've been around that lake, and I know it's a lot of areas out there you could make active if you wanted to. So I think it'd be a good idea to make sure we do that in the future, Meredith. Designate what can be active so, the commissioners can see that. Because, they looking at this, they thinking that all this is wooded, and it's not the case, I don't think.
It's just open,
It's just open.
but it may be active, but it may be passive. And I think it's really nice when you see, oh, wow, developers coming in with an opportunity to build on 100 acres, but they're only choosing 50. It's not that clear cut. And I think it should be explained a little better. And it's not just you all. I've seen all the developers come through like that. And this here project couldn't be done under the zoning that it currently is, correct?
Correct.
It just seems like it's going to be so much busier than the original intention or the original zoning had it slated for. And that's a concern because I know traffic is going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue coming out of Redford Place, coming out of Virginia Water, on both sides of Virginia Water, which is the Cedar Lake side and I forget, Carlton Point side. And then School Street with the elementary school right there, I think that's going to be problematic as well. And I think the classification that the zoning currently is, with it being D and E, those aren't the greatest levels for traffic studies, in my opinion. But of course, I know there was a lot that went into that, but it just does not seem like we're going into a better situation. It does seem like it's going to be, traffic's going to be, I think, severely impaired based on this development and future ones.
And our team has spent hours talking about what's the right density, should you be looking for multifamily in this location? And so part of the equation, when you look at the future land use map, it calls for high density residential. So high density residential is 6 to 12 acres. On this side, I think that's, if you're gonna get up to 12 acres, over 1,000 units, we're proposing under 300. But if you look at what the intent was behind that designation, we're right at Main Street. We're just off of Main Street. Main Street's developing. We want to encourage commercial uses on Main Street. And so you have to take advantage of opportunities to bring folks to your Main Street. And so if it was going to be developed with low density residential, I think that's doing a disservice to all of the efforts that the town has done to encourage an active Main Street, because you want to have people there. You want to have as many as you can fit without having negative impacts that can walk there. And so I think that's what we've been looking at with this project, is how can you do it? And so when we look at Food Line and those uses on Main Street, pretty active. You've got loading areas in the back, maybe not the most attractive. Buffer it, but put your density there and put sidewalks to get folks to your Main Street. And then transition it to the single family neighborhood. So that was how we looked at it, is to see if we can achieve multiple goals. And in the end, when you look at the TIA, the impacts of this project are actually pretty minimal. The existing state is problematic, but what this project adds to it is actually really just a small drop in the bucket.
Thanks. Where are the greenways? You said there are greenways going through?
Yeah, so if you, the pink lines, and I can, let's see if we can, I'll start tracing them. So if you start at school.
I'll get you the red pointer.
Is there?
So the pink dotted line?
The
or
pink dotted
fuchsia
line.
or whatever color. The reason I ask is because I read the notes from the neighborhood meeting, and the answer was there will be no greenways going through the project.
If that was, it was probably a typo. Maybe it was asking if we were going to run a greenway onto neighbors. But no, the greenways here are extensive,
Okay, I
and
just wanted to make sure.
I think,
That's what it was. Okay, thank you.
and they connected the points that are called for in the greenway plan. So we're wrapping the lake, we're getting to the park, 2 ways, going through kind of a riparian area here and stubbing out to this side. So they go throughout the site.
Wait, that's a lake, you said? Lake, I forget the name, something with an A, right?
Unnamed, I guess, to be named.
Okay. So,
Yeah, so this brown is that lake. So that was on that last slide. I think that photo was taken from around here, so it doesn't even capture the full extent. But it's about 6 acres, a 6-acre lake, which is sizable.
that's going to be premium lots back there, isn't it?
It's going to be
Lake-
premium
lake-
walking as well.
Yeah, lakefront property. And that's open to the public?
Mhm.
Who maintains that?
Public greenway, so I guess publicly maintained.
Yeah,
Be dedicated to the town.
There are greenways. There are greenways.
So even the lake? The lake as well? Who maintains the lake?
Oh, I don't know. Homeowner Association, unless they dedicate that to us, I think homeowner association.
That's a bill.
We have not proposed to dedicate it. Now, if the town came to us and said, we see an amenity here, that can be something that was explored, but that is not something that's been looked at here. So it would just be the greenway trails, and the HOA would be responsible for maintenance of all the common areas.
I think overall it looks really good to me. The only hiccups I have, I'm struggling with School Street. I think that's gonna be really problematic, and we gotta get that figured out. and the single-family section is not active. So, have you ever seen, I'm only mentioning this because I was in New York recently, and they have a park, I was surprised, I was in the city, New York City, and they have walking trails, but they have like these exercise things along the way. Have you seen that? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I thought that was phenomenal. I had never seen that. And then I saw it of all places, New York City. But it was pretty awesome. So I keep looking at the single family home. It's just blah. Anyway, that was my thought.
That's a really good idea. I've got one in the park near my house, and I use it all the time.
Gonna walk, you might as well have some.
Okay. Any other questions?
I
I
have,
know you part of the Open Space Greenway group there, liaison. Any discussions on this from their perspective?
No, I think it's a good layout, and, again, yeah, you can put houses wherever you want and everything else, but I feel like, and we talk about passive and active spaces and everything else, but at the same time, what they're looking to preserve here and putting that trail through there, I mean, that's a piece of like nature in the middle of town. So I like that. I like that look. I like that the pond's still gonna stay there. The pollinator gardens, of course, I'm gonna like that. And then the piece of park as well, I mean, yeah, it's an acre and a half, but I mean, still, it's right across the street from our park already. So it will serve a purpose for something, I'm sure, in the future. And I'm mostly excited about the greenways. I think the greenways kind of touch every part of the property and bring all the townhouse people and the single family people all together to get wherever they want to go. And I think it's a nice layout. I like it.
What were the two stars again? I'm sorry.
So this is the park.
Right.
So 1.5 acres. This is the amenity area, pool and clubhouse. And then this is that pollinator garden.
I mean, I look right to the south of that too. I mean, Redford or Villages is right below that. So there's a pool, and there's there's tennis courts back there.
Volleyball.
No. I'm saying like for all those. No. I'm saying for all those houses, there's a pool and there's volleyball court and there's tennis courts. That's it for all those houses.
500 houses?
And then we're talking about like, there's not enough here for these houses. So I feel like there could be more active stuff up in there, but I feel like apples to apples, it has about the same amount of stuff that you have in Villages versus this property.
But it also adds on a lot more traffic, and that was not the original intent of that property when it was created. It wasn't meant for more homes, it was meant for commercial. So now you're impacting the communities in the back with the additional traffic.
Yeah, the people that's reached out to me that lives over there, they don't want commercial there.
I'm not suggesting commercial comes there, I'm just saying that when it was created.
I know when
It
it's
was not
created.
created to have all of this additional residential homes in front of that neighborhood.
Well, why did we make it high density, Meredith? If she's correct, it was not intended to have all those homes there. Why is the comprehensive plan says it's high density?
Wasn't it residential low? That's what we're talking about, right?
I am not sure why the future land use designation is high-density residential. I could take a planner's guess and say it is close to our Main Street. And as the applicant mentioned before, you do want to have residents who can activate your Main Street. So if you have a higher density product, it's easier to activate a commercial corridor and help that be successful.
And this proposed project, if I think I heard what he said, is not high density, is it? It's like
Part of it
3
is. I
homes
think a
per.
part
It is,
One side.
it's not density-wise. If you look at the townhome product and the lot size, it might feel higher density, but based on the gross acreage, it is not high density.
But what did you say earlier? You said medium density, and didn't you say high as well?
The townhomes are only allowed in residential high,
Okay.
and so that's why they're requesting the residential high on the western side of the project, and then the single-family detached are residential medium in a cluster setup.
So they're requesting high, but they're not building it to high.
That you have to request high for townhomes.
Right.
But he's still under the minimum. Correct. what is that, 3 point something versus?
So the
3.18.
townhome section, if you took that in isolation, is about 3.9 units per acre, and high density calls for 6 to 12, so.
For apartments too.
Right.
So the-
And just to kind of answer a comment or a question you had about what was approved originally, that RPUD district, it's a little uncertain as to what was or was not permitted under that permit. But to the extent it's commercial uses there, in a lot of ways, commercial uses are higher traffic generators, drawing people in through existing neighborhoods to the south, to the west. At different times, so likely a lot more impactful, and certainly would welcome if you had questions for traffic engineers, but that putting residential uses in this location would actually end up being a better traffic situation.
And just for clarification, Meredith did find the intended use for the land before, so she does know, she does have record of what was intended to be there, just for your own information.
Yeah, and there's a concept plan that we've seen, but the lock to say that was what was required is what's not certain. Was that concept a commitment or not is what we couldn't determine.
I have some slides if you would like me to share them. If you want to look what was there before, or if you don't, it's perfectly fine.
I don't need it.
Okay.
I just have one other question. Where are the exits from I see the townhome exits from the single-family home, if you could point that out for me.
Sure. So, yeah, the townhomes, we're adding the 2 connections under Redford, and then there are 2 termination points. There's a connection to Long Melford, right here, and then School Street connection, which we know what needs to be done there. We will be stubbing to the town property here. This stub was originally located in this location, but spoke with some neighbors, and they did not like that location, and also looking at the town's plans, moved that connection to this location to line up with future Young Street connection. And then there's a stub to this location. There is another street stub that ends just off screen here. So this is HOA-owned property where the connection would need to be made if possible. And so we provided that stub to facilitate a future connection. But to get back to your original question, School Street and Long Melford, in addition to Redford Place, are the ones that would be certain as of today, but then there are future connections that are set up.
Go back to that connection you mentioned that has a stub and there's another stub.
Yeah, so the
connected stubs?
neighborhood here, yeah, so that is HOA-owned property and would require an HOA vote and a process that we haven't endeavored or understood at this point.
What HOA is that?
That,
Cedar Lakes.
Cedar Lakes.
Cedar Lake?
And I don't think they want it, this,
So how does that work then? What if they say no?
so if they say no, the connection's there and it can be revisited until they say yes. So the best we can do, because we can't force them to do it, is to make it a possibility. Yeah, it's privately owned property, so we can't force that connection.
Right.
But what we're doing is we're making it possible. So we had originally, because we thought that was unlikely, we didn't have that connection. We just had the road bending and we didn't stub to that. But in discussions with staff, we want to leave that possibility open. Why close the door if you don't have to? And so that's why we put the stub in that location.
Anybody know the name of the road? I'm just curious. I think the HOA.
Somebody said it, what is it?
Irina Drive, I can speak to that if you'd like me to.
Irina Drive.
in a minute. No, in a minute. We'll wait.
Irina Drive. So whether that happens or not is not going to impact this development, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that's not accounted for in the TIA, nor was the Young Street connection. So again, that assumes that only the connections that are shown here are provided. But to help us address concerns about traffic, this development does set up future outlets. And anytime you can improve the grid, you improve the grid. And so that's what this allows you to do.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, a connection to Young Street.
All right, did you have more you hadn't asked me any questions. You got
No,
more questions?
I'm good. I've been listening, and they've answered most of my questions here.
Dan,
so I
you
have
hadn't
no
asked a lot of
questions.
questions either. You
School
have
Street
any?
was my biggest issue, and you said that you are actively in discussions with Wake County.
Today even.
Okay.
Dan,
I'm
you
interested to
have
see the
questions?
outcome of that.
My question is also concerning, well, not School Street, because we didn't talk about that, but right there, yes.
Yeah. So the Young Street connection, we've had discussions with the town manager, with staff as to facilitating that connection. Could that be done with this project? We spent a lot of time trying to figure out if there's a way that we could commit to doing that in connection with this project. Where we ran into the hurdle was we don't know what that connection is yet. So we don't know if it's definitely going to align in that location, what the town hall site's going to be. So we don't have a commitment today, but that is not because we're not willing to work with the town or because we don't want to do it. It's because there's too much uncertainty for us to be able to say, yes, we're going to do it. But we want to continue those discussions, figure out how we can accomplish that with the town.
And they could be done as part of the conditions.
It can, except the condition that we could have without knowing what the street is, and we had worked with Dave on it to some degree, was it's essentially an agreement to agree. So we would agree to enter into a development agreement to make this happen, but we don't know what that development agreement is until we actually know what the plans are. So that's where we got caught up a little bit, is we didn't ultimately know what it was that we would be committing to and how that would work.
When will we have our plans?
Well, so I think, and I appreciate, we spent a little time on this. And we're not going to know what our plans are, but I think if the town was willing to commit to an alignment for our comp plan, we built a plan around that, that would probably be the best step at this point. And I come to that conclusion just based upon where, last week we interviewed the consultants for the town campus study. And as I was sitting through that and field questions from them, I realized we probably should take that off the table and go ahead and commit to what the transportation plan calls for. And then you can wheel off the development of the site plan from that, the town campus planning. So you heard the TIA did not include a stub.
Correct.
If that stub was there and showed the road that followed the CTP, that might give you some different answers, I think is what the engineer said, about School Street, the use of School Street. And if we were to say, the town were to say that we would work with the developer and commit to an alignment as part of this development, that might go a long ways to starting to free up the answers on what the impacts to Main Street would be, and also help us work with the developer on some off-sites to make that reality connection to Young Street in the near future.
So these conversations, are they financial conversations?
They would be financial conversations.
You know
But
what?
but I think the first step would be to see what the answer would be with the TIA.
Yeah, I think for clarity of the commissioners, when you say financial consideration, it would be funded by the project through impact fees like
It could
any
be-
other.
I think the development agreement
off-sites
has,
that
I
we
think
do,
the development
right?
agreement has various components that can be negotiated. How it gets
So
funded.
it may not come out of town funds.
Part of it will be developer paid and part of it will be town paid.
No, it'd be
It could be various methods. It could be a shared project. It could be because there's some beneficial use to both 3 or 4 parcels. So we really didn't get, we talked about what we didn't like, and we talked about what we could do. And then I think as this evolves, if we had some answers from an amended TIA, and could talk about what that impact could be and the potential uses that we might bring to town campus, then it might be able to bring forth some answers, clarity on how to get that street as part of this project included so that the developer has some beneficial use to it. And then we also have clarity of where we're going to put the street in the future.
How is that decision made after a decision is made tonight? Because it may not be something that the developer likes. They could say
If you're going to
no.
act tonight, then that would be something you'd have to ask or add as a condition, if they were willing to do that, to be negotiated through the development agreement.
But it's still after the fact. So are we better off tabling this until the town has more answers on the town side versus saying yes to something, and then when you come back to the drawing table, the developer doesn't like that idea, or the cost is too high? Nothing's getting cheaper these days. So how does that work? And that's what I feel sometimes we get caught in that trap of saying yes with the anticipation of, okay, we're going to do this. after, and then it comes back, well, no, I'm not doing that. And one good example is the traffic light that's on South Main Street now.
All right. So I probably want to spend some time thinking through your question and consulting with town attorney on how that could do before I answer, because I recognize you're in a place tonight. If you're willing to act, then I do think we owe you an answer on that. If you're not going to act tonight and you have other conditions you want to talk further, then we could work through that when we come back to this. But if you want to act tonight,
I'm not saying
then
that.
I don't have an answer right now.
No, and that's actually my whole point, is that we really don't have answers on our end. And I think it's only fair that they know what they would be facing, that we both know what we're facing, both sides, and we don't know. The plan, looking at the plan, I think the plan looks great, but there's some things that need to be solidified before we say yes.
And I still also think it would be good to have some solidification to the answer what we're going to do with School Street in the discussions with the school district too.
And so that's a question. If that stub to Young Street is developed, would that School Street go away, or would it stay there?
I don't know that.
That would be a question.
Yeah, so as proposed, both connections would be provided. Now, I think we're certainly open to figuring out ways to limit access, school hours. And so to Commissioner Medley, your question on how that works year-round. So the elementary school my children go to have hour restrictions on when you can turn certain directions. So I think it's simple signage that says between what drop-off time, 8:30 and 8:40, whatever, 8 and 9, whatever the key time is, you can't enter. And then between 3 and 3:45, whatever the appropriate time is. So that could happen there. And a couple observations as far as timing and how to address Young Street from the developer standpoint. One thing to comment is that there are substantial transportation impact fees at play here based on the number of units we're providing that are roughly in line with some of the estimates we've seen for improvements, but we don't know what those improvements are. So there is a benefit coming from this development regardless of whether there's a commitment today that's of equivalent scale. So we're incentivized to find a way to work with the town to utilize that for our own project. But when the question arises, well, can we wait for town plans to figure out how this is going to lay out? That causes a lot of concerns on our end as to what that means for this project and its viability. Just frankly, with the way that costs have been changing and market conditions have been changing, we as the applicant team have a lot of concerns that substantial delay to figure out those things could put this project in jeopardy as a whole. So
I don't think you mean wait to the plans. You just mean wait till you have time to work with Dave to come up with the
So there's
condition? Is that what you're
right.
saying?
There's two ways. One is, I think you're addressing where the road would go, and that's where I would say we would commit tonight that we'd follow general alignment of the CTP, or in our
I think we
in our
should. I mean,
approval.
we make developers do the alignment
Right.
on that. We should hold ourselves to that same standard.
Right. So that weight would be done, essentially. And that's where we would direct the TIA to be reviewed as far as a Young Street access point. And then the second weight, which I think is what I would want, is to consult with the town attorney how to formulate this agreement as part of this approval, if we're going to do it tonight.
I just feel like, I just wish we had the whole package in place tonight versus doing a piece here and then trying to figure something else out. But I do want to ask the chief something, because what you all are saying about no turning during this time and, between certain hours, I remember when Rolesville High School first opened, and I know this required money on the, this cost the town money, there were police officers on School Street
Right.
stopping the kids from coming into that area because there was no signage, right? So I get with the signage, it's still going to cost the town more money because you're going to have a cop there to enforce it during those hours. So how does that work? I mean, do you all still do that, or are they allowed to now cut through there?
I'm not interested in running a law enforcement.
That's what I'm saying. So how do you enforce that?
Well, I think that gets back to the conversation with the school district. Is the school district going to allow potentially a different traffic pattern? Or are they going to be amenable to expanding that road? It is probably sufficiently, at some places, narrow. There's probably not enough right-of-way in there, or there's not enough asphalt. So to me, there's still some questions. I'm not too interested in having us be out there at different times
I agree.
delivering traffic. Yeah, right.
I agree with you, but I think it all makes a difference. We really do need that road. You know, we really need to know what's going to
road?
happen with the future road connecting
Talking about Young Street?
Young Street and,
Yeah.
you know,
Let's,
because that's going to make a big difference.
Let's circle back to this, because I think all circles back to that. So let's move on with the public hearing, and appreciate it. We may bring you back up if we have to, so.
If I could provide just one more piece of information. So our traffic engineer who's here has studied and has generated some data on if that Young Street connection was to be made, and we're happy to share that to the town, and he can talk to some of the impacts as to how many trips that would divert as well.
That may be our final discussion then. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, so at this time, I want to go ahead and hear from the public. So, so first, any comments in public in favor? Please come forward. Any comments from the public, I guess, neutral or in opposition? Please come forward. Come on up, Betty. State your name and address for the record, please.
Name is Betty Freeman, 524 Everett Road, and I've lived here most of my life, off and on, but this has always been home for 70-plus years. And this subdivision that they're talking about putting in, first thing is going to go by this elementary school, not a high school, not a middle school, elementary school. The kids are little. They don't know to watch out for traffic. So it's got to be definitive guard to keep those kids from going out into traffic. Second thing is this pond that they have on there that they're planning to be. Have you had divers go in that pond? Didn't think so, because that pond is not a pond, it's a rock quarry. Mr. Roberts used to go down there and cut stones out of that to start Wake Monument. So it's a rock quarry, it's very deep. And if somebody starts to swim in there, they could do like they did at the regular rock quarry, that's called a rock quarry, get killed, break their neck and drown. So that's got to be protected, and you got to figure out who's going to be liable for it. And the third thing is, there is a neighborhood behind the school that they're all little small lots with nice little houses, but small houses. How are they going to feel? Is this gentrification personified? How are they going to feel when you build $500,000 houses right behind them?
Anything else, Betty?
Well, has anybody got any questions? Because Main Street of Rolesville was very quiet when the Beltline opened up. However, it's back now to being just as busy or busier than it was before the Beltline opened. So what's it going to be if you keep putting houses off of Main Street and have that as your only traffic pattern, or one of your two traffic patterns for 300 houses?
Anything else, Betty?
That's it.
Thank you, Betty. Appreciate your comments. Any others speak in favor or?
I just, sorry. My name is Eric Michelson. I'm at 605 Asheville Drive. I'm not really in favor or not in favor. The thing I'm really concerned about is we have that Redford Drive with a circle, and I just don't see how putting in the townhomes, even with the circle, and they said that's a traffic circle, it's going to make traffic easier. I mean, I've been in my house now going on 4 years, and I've seen more and more traffic going around that circle. People drive through that circle. I don't know if any of you town have been over there recently, but there's truck tires and whoever else goes and drives through that occasionally. And I know, police officers go there and look at that, but, that, I see that being an issue with traffic, and I know they're supposed to be bringing heavy equipment down the road as well. At least that was what the last plan or last thing that we went to, I think it was a couple months ago. They're going to be bringing right down Redford. The other thing that concerns me is I live right behind the purple at 605, where you see where the cul-de-sac is, behind the circle, I guess, coming towards the bottom of the map. With the blasting they're going to be doing.
Is it here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So the blasting they're going to be doing, what I'm concerned about is, so they've been doing blasting in downtown Rolesville with the construction they're doing over there. I mean, my house is going to be, 500 feet from the blast zone. What kind of liability coverage or coverage do I have for my house for structural damage to my property? That's my concern, and I'm sure other people in the vicinity of myself probably would have had that concern. The other thing, I know they mentioned that they were going to be building a buffer, which was going to be 50 yards, and possibly putting up, I requested a fence. I don't know if that's something they brought up to you, but I think that'd be a really good idea. I mean, when I come home at nighttime now, I can see my lights through. I mean, I got some pine trees, but I mean, it's still, I can see my backyard and the lights coming through when I don't have my blinds up. So with the tunnels being built right there, I know the garage is going to be back to the back of me, but that's also a concern of mine with the buffer they're talking about building. I just want to make sure it's going to be big enough for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Anybody else? I think I'll come up and state your
Didn't put my name on the list, but
name and address for the record, please.
Christy Redfern, 665 Long Melford Drive. I know we moved to Rolesville about 6 years ago, and I know that there are many people who have been in this town many, many years, but I come from a very small community in Kentucky where we didn't have growth and opportunity. And when we moved here, I brought my kids to Rolesville hoping to have a place that they would want to grow up and stay. Rolesville can do it right if they do it right. If they grow and they put the things here where people want to stay, raise their families where their families want to continue to grow and those children want to continue to grow. If you put communities with amenities where the town is built with amenities, walkable paths, neighborhoods, where the kids want to stay, grow up, where the communities want to stay and have that growth, it can be done correctly. Having the community come here to these meetings, hear the builders out, have the builders listen to the town and the commissioners for the feedback, it can be done properly. If it doesn't grow too fast, if it can have the right amenities there for the town to have access to. I think this is a good thing, but again, the traffic patterns, whether that's speed bumps, stop signs, to be able to slow things down. I mean, we see it on Virginia Water. Like I said, we're on Long Melford. This is going to be a very opened up thoroughfare for what we have as a dead end in our street right now. So this is going to open up a whole slew of traffic for our street. Do I like that? No, because my kids play in the street. So this is a whole, I mean, they're getting older, so they're going to move from that amenity for them. But this is going to be something that our street's going to have to get used to, is traffic coming through there. But what I do like is that the things that are coming to downtown, what this offers up for greenways. And so we move our street playing to the greenway, to a park. So I like the growth. I like that it's happening slowly. I like what Rolesville is doing. So I don't want people to get fearful of what's happening here and immediately stop the growth. But just if it's done correctly, if the safety measures are put in place for the community, for people who are out riding their bikes, and for the school children and everything, I think it can be done correctly.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Thank you. Your turn. State your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I am Catherine Van Buren, and I live at 609 Vigo Court in Cedar Lakes, and I am on the HOA with Cedar Lakes. And you had asked about connecting to Irina. And my understanding is the reason that wasn't done when our neighborhood was built is that is a natural spring. So you would actually have to build a bridge and have a regulated structure to connect it. It's not just a stub, a little bit of gravel and a stub. There's a issue there, and that's why they actually moved that street, I'm assuming, is originally, I'm referring to the street that would connect to Young Street. Originally, it was much farther down. There's actually a huge body of water, not unlike the 6-acre lake, right on the other side, on the Young Farm. And where they had the street was driving directly into the lake. So I'm sure once they saw that, they realized it was a bigger problem than they had originally anticipated, so they moved the street up, which I appreciate. I am concerned about Long Melford, because she's correct, it is a quiet street that already connects to another neighborhood. So now you're gonna connect one street through 3 neighborhoods, which will inevitably be your main street in and out until Young Street is the solution. So, to my knowledge, the HOA is not giving that land up for the road because it's not a safe option, but hope that helps.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Dorothy Jones Pender.
Yeah, how you doing, Ms.
I own
Jones?
property at 118 School Street, and I'm concerned about the getting in and out of the traffic pattern. And there are some other homes back there. I don't know if they've looked into what would happen with those, but the traffic is my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Anybody else? Come on up, Betty.
This happened the last time they were before you guys to present a housing project. And I don't know that Pulte has done the research this time. Where this particular pond is, this whole area of Rolesville is full of rock. So you need to prepare the people in the area to get ready for the blasting, because it will be constant unless you're building slab homes. There used to be a flat-out rock back there that they had cactuses growing on it. It used to be an area that they used to take the kids from school back there as a school, like a field trip kind of thing, and showed it to them. And it's on that property.
Thank you, Betty. Yeah, I think it's some exposed rock back there, if I believe I'm right. I see our Parks and Rec guy back there, but I don't think they're building on that solid rock, I don't think.
That's going to be part of the lake?
No, I don't
Oh, it's just separate?
think it's part of that green area.
So I do have a question based on what you said about the lake. Does it matter if it's full of rock or not? I just don't know. I mean,
Who you asking the question to?
I'm asking you, like, from your knowledge, is it full of rock as she had stated? And if so?
It's a rock quarry, yeah, it's a rock, it's got clear water in it.
And they're not touching that, correct?
No, that's staying the same.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other comments, I guess? Okay, let's see, we've been going an hour and a half. Let's hear the transportation person. You said you had a transportation person that had some numbers on the, on what the extension would do to go out to East Young. Let's hear that real quick, and then we'll see if we want to table this till we get the condition that will solve Cool Street problem a little bit, or where we want to go from there. So it's all yours.
Yes, sir. My name is Kevin Dean. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates, 300 South Main Street in Holly Springs. So we have taken a look at that. Obviously, Stantec is your traffic consultant, but we were brought on by Lennar to just take a look at how we might address some of the impacts. Certainly expect that the Young Street connection would help take traffic out of the School Street connection. It would de-incentivize people if they're not having to work their way up School Street to get to Main Street. Also another option for some of the folks who are trying to get out to the bypass. Instead of having to go up Redford Place Drive and take a left on Main Street, then go through town, a connection out to Young Street with a right turn onto Young Street back onto the bypass would be another option. So we do see that it could be a benefit. Not sure that it's going to move all 2,000 cars out of development down this connection to Young Street, but do see that it could provide some benefit in another option for site traffic, so.
So that connection could also help the existing neighbors that live back there come into that new connection and go out that way as well.
Yes, sir, that would be an expectation.
Because right now they would have to sit in school traffic. to get
Correct,
over
and I
there.
think that's what we're trying to be careful about with School Street recommendations. Like Ms. Jones said, making sure that it's a comprehensive solution a solution that we are trying to implement to address our project's impact doesn't adversely impact the residents who are there today and restricting their own access. So yes, sir, that's exactly right.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I have one quick question. If somebody hit upon it, I meant to ask earlier, with the circle, the roundabout coming out of the villages, so basically it's just a straight road. I mean, it's, I don't know if it's north and south, so now you're going to put an east and west on there. I'm just using that for I'm using it generally speaking.
Sure.
How does that even work? Because now you're going to have, I mean, I know it works in other places, so don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But how does it work in the villages where you're having the traffic come out? Now you're sitting and waiting, and there's not that much space, visually speaking, of course, between going around the roundabout versus going a quarter's way through, waiting for traffic to come out to continue going around. So how do you address, is the circle going to be bigger?
To my knowledge, the dimensions of that traffic circle won't change. It was studied as part of part of Stantec's analysis for the project, and it was shown to operate acceptably. The volumes being added to that traffic circle will be much lower than what we'd see on Virginia Water Drive. What it's serving on those new east-west connections that you mentioned are going to be lower. So I think that will make it feel a little different because there's not as much demand that's competing with the traffic on Redford Place Drive coming from the sides as you might see in other traffic circles where the volumes are a little bit more balanced.
Maybe they're more constant outside of the villages, but now on the Food Lion side, that's the only way in and out, correct?
So currently, but then there is a connection, Virginia Water Drive being extended as part of the Walbrook development, I believe will help offset some of that because that's a new connection out to Main Street further to the west. So in all honesty, I think that will take some of the traffic currently having to come north towards Food Line, currently having to work their way up Main Street. I know there's other connections out that way, but I think that will help offset some of that just by being another outlet and inlet for that traffic. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that kind of outside this picture will help that a bit.
I don't think it connects to Wall Creek, though. There's
Not Wall Creek.
Walbrook.
Walbrook.
Oh, okay.
So when you extend that out.
Back behind the village. I was on Wall Creek, and I was
Yeah.
like, hold up, it's not going that way.
Okay, so that's good for that side. That makes sense. So I guess on the right side, opposite the Food Lion side, so when you have the traffic, I guess the question tonight is, how will those roads help remove some of the traffic from that inner circle? So School Street is still questionable.
Sure.
Getting to Young Street, Cedar Lakes has already stated that they're not looking to extend their road on Long Melford.
So
No, that's not even Long Melford, I'm sorry, because that's the villages. So it would be Cedar Lake side. So there's still some question again on that side. How is this going to work?
And I think the analysis accounted for the access points that we knew were going to be there. Certainly Young Street takes some of that out. I think while I appreciate everyone likes to be at the end of a stub street because it's great for kids to be able to play out and play basketball on the street, I do think that the connection to Long Melford Place will offer an additional option for the folks at the end of that street. Instead of working their way back south to Virginia Water Drive through traffic, 2 circles to the north, they're going to have the same opportunity to come through our development out to the traffic. So it's a balance.
So can you show me on the Food Lion side, as it's being referred to, where that connection to Walbrook will be?
So that's an extension of Virginia Water Drive. So that's further to the south. So that's happening off the page and going out to the west. But
So you know where the playground
So where would it
is?
connect then?
It's right through the woods.
Got it. Okay.
That would be helpful.
Where is that on there?
It's over here.
But he said it would be a connection to that neighborhood.
So, yeah, so the people that normally come from here will go up this way, but now they can go out that way.
Oh, got it. I understand. Okay, okay.
So it's in Carlton Point.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So again, I understand that there are additional connection points, back out this way, but the extension of Virginia Water Drive coming out, we'll say somewhere in this area, because I believe there are multiple access points proposed as part of that. Some of the folks on the backside of these developments who are trying to get to Rogers Road to the east, instead of having to come up Redford Place Drive, will be able to get out to Main Street quicker and then go through town as opposed to going up Redford Place. So that kind of option.
Okay.
So wait a second, so you're going from the circle, and you're cutting to the left?
So this.
He's talking about current traffic.
He's talking
Carlton's
about
going to
current-
Village.
current Village
We'll have
traffic.
another option to go the other way. So they
Correct.
don't necessarily have to go that way.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so that's, I'm sorry, so you said that's for Carlton Point?
Right,
But
Carlton
not for
Point
this
Village.
development?
Right.
No, ma'am, though, we would certainly expect that to be another connection point for our traffic as well. So
But where would that be?
with our traffic having access to Redford Place Drive at what is currently just a landscape circle now without our driveways, but once our driveways are there, and then the connection to Long Melford as well, but that connection out to Redford Place Drive and allowing traffic to get down to Virginia Water and out is an option. I don't think that'd be preferred given how close we are to Main Street here, but I think as you work further south, that connection out to Main Street becomes more attractive, especially with traffic signals being installed there and everything else.
But if someone's leaving Rolesville, that would probably be their likely way to go versus coming up through Main Street.
Sure. So just helping, we always talk about punching holes in a sandbag, it's just one more way for that to escape a little faster.
But it still doesn't speak on the traffic that's in there that's coming out saying they're going to Main Street.
Ma'am,
It's either going to be left or right for the Food Lion side.
sure, you're exactly right.
So that goes back to the circle being overwhelmed with traffic.
And your consultant's analysis showed that it would not be once this is added.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, appreciate that. So here, I think here's where we're at, David. If I hear comments, I believe even our town manager is requesting him and you get together and maybe work out something on this East Young Street as a condition. One of the things I heard. The other thing was for them and us as a town and school to work together, come up with maybe a conditional solution on School Street, was the two things I heard. Was it something else?
I mentioned more active for the single family area.
Yeah, maybe a.
Like a top
Look
lot.
at that.
Some kind of park, pocket park or something in there.
When we talk about the Young Street Road connection, I do think the TIA needs to be refreshed with that, and because DOT is going to have to be involved in that conversation because they'll have an access.
Talking about a condition for the,
Gotcha.
you know,
I'm just trying to figure out what it could be, because the TIA may
Have a lot of answers.
talk about what it could be if it brings a certain amount of traffic to Young Street, and DOT says it has to be this size or whatever, is what I'm trying to get at. So it may take a refreshment of that to get us to the point where we can then work on
well,
that.
then I would ask our consultants that did our plan to give us a refund. Because it's in our connectivity plan to do that. Right.
Well, but with the site plan they asked for, they reviewed, did not have that until after they reviewed it.
Who is this now?
The site plan that was used for the TIA did
No, I'm
not have
talking
the
about
street
our
study.
connectivity plan,
Oh, I'm sorry.
right?
Yeah,
It calls for that to be in there, right?
Huh?
Our community connectivity
Right.
thoroughfare plan,
right.
right?
So if that was in there,
Right?
are you saying they should have attached to that plan? They
No,
should
he's
follow?
saying, he's trying to see if it's feasible, put it in there, and I'm saying,
No, I'm not saying it's not feasible. I'm saying it is feasible. I'm saying DOT needs to review it as far as what it'll be.
To show the
As far as
impact. The TIA, yeah.
what the intersection will look like at Young and whatever this road's going to be called.
But I think the same thing for Virginia Water, since we brought up Walbrook. Because I think part of our TIA issue is making sure we're including what's developing around these proposals to make sure it's comprehensive. And to me, it doesn't feel comprehensive right now. Just feels like ideas. So if we do this, then this will be better, but we don't have that look, in my opinion. And one other thing that I should mention, in that circle, we were talking about that traffic circle, where that pool is that problematic in that circle? I'm just thinking about residents and using it. And I know that not 100%, I have a pool in my community I haven't been in probably 10 years. So I know not everyone uses the amenities in your community, but it's right on that circle. I'm just, from an engineering standpoint, is there a better location?
How far off is that? Because I was thinking the same thing. How far does it set back? Because there's another neighborhood, another development that did the same thing, but they're not nestled inside of another community. They're their own community. They're off the street. There's not a lot of traffic yet, but it's coming. But they are right on the street.
Just a question.
So, yeah, the amenity hasn't been formally designed, but I mean, I think certainly being cognizant of the street there'd be landscaping, plantings, and if necessary, you can put the clubhouse between the pool and things like that to create the right interaction with the street. But we haven't reached that level of detail in the plans.
There's no access off the circle. You have to go into
Into the circle to get there, yeah.
yeah.
Mayor Curran, I think there was a question to me relating to Young Street. I will share the comment that the manager mentioned, which is that a lot of brain power has been expended on that question so far. The challenge, we have a benefit and we have a risk. The benefit of a conditional zoning case is that most anything that the applicant would like to agree to and helps the board find support is okay, so long as it attaches to the land and relates to the development in some way. However, each one of those conditions needs to be enforceable. They are ordinances, they are laws, they're regulations. So if the condition is you, developer, shall build Young Street, that would be an enforceable condition. I don't think they would agree to that if it said that. The challenge is you couldn't really have a condition that says the developer in the town will talk about finding a way to build Young Street upon a route that may someday be approved. I wouldn't know how the town attorney and the planning department could enforce that to decide whether to issue a building permit. And that's the challenge. So we struggled with it quite a bit.
But Dave, if that's a challenge from a legal standpoint, that's a challenge for us right now, trying to figure out what's going to happen with the traffic. So that's like us saying no, because you're saying that's going to be a challenge to enforce. Does that make sense?
Correct. So the normal way for this to happen in Rolesville, because we have impact fees, would be to assess the project, the appropriate impact fee, so that when the time came to build the road, the town would have the funds to do so.
Some of the issue is the Some of the problem is the assessment of it, and just like the developer expressed an interest in or a concern about costs going up and delay, the longer you delay, we know the costs are likely to go up. So how do you assess that? What do you do? How do you build that contingency for inflation or whatever with the developer so that we're not stuck trying to build, a $30 million road down the road?
So there's guidance from the courts and from the law as to how we set our fees and how we justify how our fees, impact fees and others are set. The presumption is as a dollar becomes less valuable, those fees are more dollars. And so your fees should be adjusting annually the same as costs would increase.
But we know in recent times with COVID, costs are way above what a normal inflation cost would be. So if you're talking about a 50% difference, do you then, charge your developers 1.5 times impact fees? I don't think they would go for that, nor the legislature.
Sure. And then I think we're also seeing strategies regarding when would you build? Do you wait for a more opportune time? Fortunately, with fees, those funds end up in an account and they should be available. But they won't tend to keep up with inflation when it's at the rate it currently is.
I think we've had this experience already, so I would caution this board to keep that in mind about building roads and how much they cost. Granite Falls Boulevard, I might say.
Exactly. So that, again, back to my concern is we say yes to something and not have all of our answers, although you did provide some insight. I still think we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage, but timing, I know, is important to the developer, to any developer, and not trying to hold up progress, me personally, but we need answers before we make big decisions.
So the case before you now does not have a Young Street component. That's not the proposal right now. But it does appear, at least based upon the traffic engineers, it could still be reasonable to exist. And the promise would be it would improve in the future if and when the campus is built out to the east.
Well, even those traffic numbers, and I always feel like when I say something, I'm going against what an engineer's findings are, but the reality of it is, I think it's still going to be more impacted. The traffic's going to be more, it's going to impact that area more than what the traffic study is saying. And then we're still dealing with the elementary school right there in the middle of it all. And I don't know how you would enforce no through traffic during certain hours of the day. How does that work? To me, there's still questions that are not answered.
So you continue it or delay it or whatever till we get some answers. Sounds like we don't have enough answers to make a decision because School Street has come up repeatedly. I think this board, it sounds like everyone thinks this is a good idea. There's just some details that need to be worked out. I, for one, am concerned about the TIA, and I would like to look at Young Street. I also want to look at Virginia Water because that could actually help this development, as it was mentioned earlier.
One option you would have would be to continue this case to your next meeting. It may not be the case that it's ready to go, in which case there could be a consent continuance on that meeting as well, but you would have continued it to a date and time certain and would avoid any need to re-advertise the public hearing.
So can we
That's
close
the
the
route.
public hearing and continue to vote to next hearing?
That's the board's decision. You could close the public hearing, but at that point, you've decided you're taking it entirely for yourselves and don't want to hear anything more,
So we don't.
maybe outside the staff, for
I think we
example.
should leave it open for
Yes,
the
leave it
public,
open.
because if you're introducing new information for the public, they should have an opportunity to weigh in on it.
Definitely.
That's
And
just
even
my
the
thought.
developer, because the developer would need an opportunity to speak as well. if you
Entirely,
close it, they don't
entirely
get
within
that.
you would have satisfied your legal obligations by what you did today, but it is certainly the case that many towns decide to leave it open in case additional information is desired.
I'll leave it open.
All right, I'm going to move to continue the legislative hearing to MA 22-03 and ANX 22-06 to the 12/6/22 meeting to continue discussion and exchange for information.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Commissioner. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion to continue and a second. Is there any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think it's unanimous. Madam Clerk? Any other, I guess, directions to our manager that you want to make sure that we clarify on the next time we talk about this?
I do have one little thing
Any
to say.
directions?
Yeah, just the part where Cedar Lakes, just to the point of the stub out for them, I just want to get clarification on how that would work. If they say no, that limits the options, but what impact does that have on Cedar Lakes moving forward with the town?
The plan before you doesn't suggest making a connection there, just stubbing it out. Certainly, sentiments could change in the future. The town may legally acquire that. I mean, there are all sorts of possibilities.
We got hundreds of them.
That's what I wanted
Yeah,
to hear.
I don't.
You just said, okay.
But not before you now. There's no
got
connection,
hundreds of
just a
them,
stub.
Yeah. Right, and I just wanted to hear him say that part, and he said it, so
On
we're
that
good.
particular street, y'all continue to play basketball.
Yes. It's where our playground is currently.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to say that's it for this one. We will see you guys again, hopefully. And I think we got a closed session to do, but before we do that, I think what I'm going to do is, let's take a break. So let's take a break to 8 o'clock, and at 8 o'clock, we'll come back in here, and I'll hear a motion for closed session at that time.
Is it possible to ask a question before you adjourn, please?
Is it related to this case?
Yes, it is.
Come up, George. State your name and address, George.
My name is George Garcia, 524 Averett Road. Has anybody taken the time to ask the Walbrook Hoa if they're going to be thrilled about having a thoroughfare going through the possibility of having a thoroughfare going through their development there? That's an established neighborhood. It's been there for quite a while, and at one point in, one point out. Now it's going to become a thoroughfare.
Which neighborhood?
That's a possibility.
Walbrook's not.
Wall Creek?
Wall Creek, I'm sorry, yeah.
It's Walbrook we're talking
It's
about.
not Wall.
It's the same thing, George.
Yeah,
It's next door to it, it's not that neighborhood.
Walbrook. It's
Yeah.
the next one over. That hasn't been built yet.
yeah. Have they been asked?
There ain't nobody's there.
Huh?
It ain't
It
been
hasn't
built.
been built yet. Not Wall Creek.
Yeah. All right, thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
thought the same thing. I thought the same.
That'd be hard to do, wouldn't it?
Because I know they were.
All right, so we're going to take a recess. Anybody want to hang around? We're going to go into closed session at 8 o'clock, but appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. Okay, we're back live.
Okay. I move that the board go into closed session to consult with the town attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to Chapter 143, Section 318.11A3 of the North Carolina General Statutes.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second? Motion second. Any other discussion? Not hearing it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're in closed session.